Look, your 2010 MacBook still boots, yet your 2022 model is already thermal throttling into an early grave. I took them both apart to find out why better tech is actually worse. I have them both on the desk right now. On the left, the 2010 Unibody MacBook Pro. It's thick, it's heavy, and it feels like a literal slab of industrial history. Then, on the right, the 2022 M2 model. It's impossibly thin, impressively light, and, well, arguably one of the most powerful portable machines ever built. But here's the catch. That weight in the old machine, it isn't just dead metal. It represents a density of repairability that has been systematically erased from the modern consumer experience. See, when I cracked open the 2010 model, I saw a world of possibilities. You can swap the RAM in 60 seconds. You can upgrade the storage for $40. You can replace the battery without a heat gun and a prayer. I mean, it was designed to be lived with. But the 2022 model? Its thinness is merely a coffin for your data. Everything is soldered. Everything is proprietary. If one tiny capacitor on that logic board decides to give up the ghost, the entire machine becomes a bloody massive paperweight. We're told this is progress. We're told that integration is the only way to achieve these performance metrics. But whilst the silicon is getting faster, the lifespan of the hardware is plummeting. We're digging into the guts of these machines today to expose the great downgrade happening right under our noses. It's a quiet revolution of planned obsolescence, disguised as peak engineering. And if you think this is just about Apple, you're sadly mistaken. This is the new blueprint for almost everything you own. It's a daunting reality where the more you pay, the less you actually own. Let's look at the silicon reality versus the marketing myth. Look, Silicon Valley didn't just change the way these devices look. They changed the way we perceive value. It started with the Minimalist Deception. We were sold a dream of a seamless ecosystem where everything just works, while in reality, they were stripping away the very utility that made our gadgets tools rather than toys. I remember when a laptop was a modular investment, right? You could swap the RAM, pop out the battery, and maybe even upgrade the storage on a whim. But then, the marketing shifted. Thinner was suddenly synonymous with better. We were told that removing the headphone jack was an act of courage, or that gluing a battery deep inside a chassis was necessary for that sleek industrial aesthetic. It was a brilliant move, quite literally. By convincing us that ports were clutter, they created a bloody massive market for dongles and adapters. Every lost port was a calculated win for the bottom line. See, this wasn't user-centric design. It was shareholder-centric engineering. They realized that if you can't open it, you don't own it. You're just leasing it until the battery inevitably degrades. While they promised us a minimalist nirvana, what we actually got was a gilded cage. We were told that cloud computing would make local hardware specs irrelevant, so why even bother with high-performance local storage? Yet here we are, paying thousands for hardware that is harder to fix and easier to break.
It's a daunting shift in the tech landscape, a place where the aesthetics of the future are being used to mask the fragility of the present. But look, that is not even the craziest part of this design shift, because while the hardware was getting thinner, the way these companies control your access to it was getting much thicker. And it all starts with a single piece of software that changed the rules of ownership forever. Look, back in 2010, ownership was a simple binary concept. You paid for the hardware, and the transaction ended the moment you walked out of the store. But as innovation hit a ceiling, the industry pivoted to what I call planned obsolescence 2.0. In 2024, mate, you are not really owning your hardware anymore. You are merely licensing it.
behind the scenes, companies have started using security updates as a sort of Trojan horse. Skeptical? They tell you it is for your protection, right? Serious? But it often brings a hidden payload of software bloat that intentionally degrades the performance of older silicon. It is a subtle, digital rot that makes perfectly functional chips feel sluggish. The technical reality here is bloody massive. Coldly, whilst the chips are faster than ever, the thermal envelopes are tighter, and the components are now serialized. This is the dark side of the modern security chip. Warning, it is not there to keep the hackers out. It is there to keep you from fixing what you already bought. Think about this. A single blown capacitor, a part that costs less than $1, can now brick a $2,000 machine. A decade ago, that would have been a 5-minute fix at any local shop. Disappointed. Today, because the components are cryptographically locked to the motherboard, the system will refuse to boot if it detects a non-authorized part. It is a digital handshake that requires a corporate blessing you will likely never get. This shift has turned the act of repair into an act of rebellion. I have seen countless devices discarded, not because they were beyond saving, but because the software decided they were no longer allowed to live. It is a brilliant piece of engineering, but for all the wrong reasons. It turns a hardware purchase into a hardware subscription. But look, that is not even the most daunting part of this evolution. Because while companies are locking down the internal components, they have also found a way to make sure that the very energy source keeping your device alive has a predetermined expiration date that you have absolutely no control over.
So we have to ask ourselves, is the trade-off actually worth it? Only if you value status over substance, right? Because look, let's call this what it really is. We are living through the great downgrade, disguised as progress. I've realized that my 2010 ThinkPad, it isn't just some relic of a bygone age. It is a blueprint for a future we have been quite literally robbed of. While the tech industry spent the last decade chasing a thinner silhouette and a more seamless matte finish, we sacrificed the very essence of ownership. I look at my old gear, and I see a machine that listens to me, not its manufacturer. It doesn't need a corporate handshake or a server-side permission slip just to function after 3 years. I mean, it doesn't have a predetermined death date baked into its motherboard. If we do not start demanding modularity over this hollow minimalism, our smart future will be nothing more than a daunting landfill of expensive, bricked glass. I am keeping my old gear because at least it still belongs to me. And look, I'm challenging you to look past the brilliant marketing and the sleek packaging. Pick up your latest device and ask yourself one simple question. Can you still open it? Because if you can't, do you really own it? Subscribe if you are tired of the disposable era.